Hi everyone, so welcome back to our YouTube channel. And today we will continue with our chapter 2, Theory of Consumer Behavior. So far in the previous videos, we have seen that the relation between the price of a good and the quantity demanded of that good. Also, we have seen the relation between the income of a consumer and the quantity demanded of that good. Right, we see different categorization of a good into normal good, inferior good, and even different good also. So in this video, we will see a different relation, a relation between the, let's say, the quantity demanded of a good that a consumer chooses and the quantity and the price of a related good. Okay. So basically, what we are trying to see over here is that, let's say, if there are two goods, right, and they are related to each other. So there are two goods, they are related to each other in a way that if a price of a good one changes, it impacts the quantity demanded of the other good, right? So if let's say price of a good one, I'm denoting it as P1, it changes, it impacts the quantity demanded of good two. All right. So um, So there are two scenarios over here. So one scenario is that let's say these two goods are, let's say these two goods are class, let's say they are, I'll just take the example first and then we can categorize them. So let's say tea and coffee, right? So what do you think? The tea and coffee. Okay. What do you think if let's say the price of tea increases? What would happen? We know that the relation between a price of a good and the quantity demanded of that good, that is the inverse relation. So the quantity of tea would fall. That we know for sure. Correct. From the law of demand. However, also, what would happen to the quantity demanded? This is I'm talking about the quantity demanded of tea. The what happened to the quantity demanded of the coffee? The quantity demanded of coffee, what would happen to that? The price of tea, as the price of tea increases, the quantity demanded of coffee, if you can see, the tea becomes costlier. So the consumers would shift to the alternative. What is alternative? We have coffee. For tea, the alternative is coffee. So the demand for coffee would increase. The quantity demand for the coffee increases. So in this case, we see that tea and coffee are substitutes. What are they? They are substitutes. So what happened? So in the case of substitutes, if the price of good one increases, the quantity demanded of a good two, what happened? Of good two decreases. Understood? If the price of good one increases, the quantity demanded of good two decreases. Okay. Now, similarly, the vice versa also. If the price of good one decreases, the quantity demanded of good two increases. As we can see, the tea and coffee are substitutes. Similarly, other examples I'm not mentioning over here, vice versa. The other examples could be what all are substitutes. Let's say we have these Coke and Pepsi, correct? These are the beverages, right? So these are the combinations, Coke and Pepsi, and we have this, let's say, um, maybe we can say shoes and sandals. Just we can say these are like substitutes also. Um, so there are many such examples also. Correct. So in that case, see that there's a very interesting relation that exists between two goods, right? Two goods in such a way that if one good becomes cheaper, the demand for the other good falls, right? Because both the goods go in like they depend on each other, right? So That's also that's one of the example type of goods, such goods. The other type could be, let's say I'm talking about another scenario. Um, this is the first scenario, and I'm talking about the second scenario. In the second scenario, let's say the um, the example I'm taking about the socks and shoes. So, what do you think if the price, or I would say one more, I would take another example, which is more relevant related to, or I would say I would say that you would be you would be like, that's more connected. You can say we have tea and sugar. Okay, so let's say if price of sugar increases, right? So what would happen? The quantity demand of the sugar falls. That we know. However, in the case, what would happen? The demand for the tea, as we know that in making a tea, we need tea leaves and sugar, right? So if the demand for we need both the ingredients, correct? So they go hand in hand. So if price of sugar increases, the demand for, or I would say the demand for tea falls. All right. So why it happens? Because they both, tea and sugar, go hand in hand. So tea and sugar are complementary to each other. All right. So if we can say, if we are making a tea and we know that one of the prices, let's say the price of sugar increases. Let's say it was earlier 15 rupees, now it's become increases to 25 or 20 rupees per kg. Then we see that the people would prefer to have less of tea, right? The demand for tea falls. And maybe they won't stop consuming tea, but yes, they would be consuming less of quantity of tea. So the demand for tea falls. So that is the one of the examples. The other example could be other examples. You can also think of other examples that are like, some combination of goods that are complementary. What I can think of is, let's say, we have these, um, what else? We have tea and milk also, correct? If I take the similar example, tea and milk, correct? And we have this shoes and socks. And there are many such examples as well. Correct. So that was all about substitutes and the complements. It's a very simple idea. However, it is also a very interesting and very simple idea, right? And we also see in our day-to-day life also. As you know, recently the petrol prices have increased, right? The petrol prices, so we can have this petrol prices and the cars. Which cars? I would say the cars which require petrol, right? The petrol or diesel cars. So these they come into they are the complementary, correct? So the price of the petrol increases, the demand for cars, the demand for petrol cars or diesel cars, it falls. Okay. Similarly, we can have the similar example over here, the petrol and EV cars. So these are the substitutes we can say, correct? How in that case substitutes? As the petrol increases, the demand for petrol cars falls and the petrol demand for EV cars increases. Got it? So the EV cars, because since the petrol is not being used in the EV, the EV cars they run through electricity, right? They don't require petrol or diesel or CNG. So the demand, because the consumers has to go, like, they need some transport, right, to travel or to for their commute. So what would happen? The alternatives. What is the alternative? The alternative is the EV cars. So there now we are seeing that there's a very surge in demand on the in the EV cars, right? So that's about the substitutes and the complements. Now come up, okay, we can see what next we have. Let's understand with the same, the next step. Uh, the next step is that the next topic I would say is the shift in the demand curves. In what scenario we see there's a shift in the demand curve? Okay, so we have this. Let's say that it's a linear demand curve, right? So we are assuming that's a linear demand curve, and this is y, this is x, and this is a, and this is b. Now, in what scenario we see that there is a shift in the demand curve? The AB would shift, we would say, to B dash, A dash, B dash, right? So, as you know that we assume in the when we are drawing the demand curve, we saw that we say that assuming other factors remaining constant, what is the relation between the price of a good and the quantity demanded of that good? So let's say those other factors like we have income, preferences of the consumer, or the prices of related goods, right? So these factors we say that, or maybe there is some other external factors also, right? So price of related good. So let's say one of or the other factors changes, right? Let's say the income of the consumer changes or increases. So if the income of the consumer increases, what would happen? The consumer would demand more of the goods, more of that good, or less of that good. Right. So as you know that if the consumer considering now let's say now 100 rupees earlier, the consumer was having an income of 100 rupees. Now the income increases to let's say 200. Okay. Now the consumer would be willing or would be able to afford more of that good, correct? Considering it's a normal good, right? So what would happen? The demand curve for the given price of that good would shift to the right, right? So at a given price, the consumer would demand higher quantities of that good. All right. So this is the price. This is not, I would say the P and this is quantity. Okay. Now, similarly, we can also have the another scenario if the, let's say the change in the taste of the consumer has evolved, right? So the demand taste of consumer has increased or improved. It could be any due to any reasons, maybe some marketing, due to some good marketing of a brand, or maybe let's say the taste has the children are demanding children maybe some due to they have their own favorite cartoon or character favorite celebrity endorsing that product, and the preference of the consumer has been shifted to that to this good one, correct? So what would happen in that case also the budget line would shift to the right, correct? So similarly, or the vice versa also, if the consumer income of the consumer falls, the demand curve would shift to the left. And if the taste of the consumer has decreased, let's say the consumer don't like the um, normal white breads, correct? The consumer's demand for the white bread has shift, like it has decreased because they are becoming more health conscious. So the preference of the consumer for white bread has reduced. So the demand curve for the white bread, given the price of the good white bread is same, it would shift to the left, right? Because the consumers now is becoming a health conscious. Now they are consuming more of wheat bread or brown breads, right? Similarly, so that was an example of shift in the budget curve, shift in the, we have this demand curve. Okay. Now, similarly, we have this movement along the demand curve also. So it's a fairly simple idea. Movement along the demand curve is it happens when the It happens when there's a change in the price of that good. Correct. So as we know, change in the price of a good, that is it basically the law of demand that we have, that as the price of good, let's say, increases, the quantity demanded of that good falls. So earlier the consumer was consuming, let's say, this. Now as the price of a good one increases, the consumer would demand less of that good. Correct. So it is a movement along the demand curve. Correct. Um, So I guess that's all for this video. And in the next video, we will cover the more on the elasticity of demand, right? So till then, stay tuned. Bye bye.